And good morning, Hoosier Nation, and welcome to I would say disappointing, but disappointing in a different way than I would normally say on this season edition of Hoosier Morning After. This is Hoosier Morning After Purdue. Last night in the late game, your Indiana Hoosiers would go on to lose on a very close game at the end. Rivalry game to Purdue, 81-76, taking the record to 14-8 on the season, and taking the Big Ten to a sad and disappointing 5-6 record right now on the season. This was obviously going to be a game that IU had to come in and play one of its best games of the season going in. I mean, obviously, I look to you in the audience, and I doubt any of you would have had their hopes that a fight and energy that we saw last night was what IU was going to give to us. So pleasantly surprised, obviously, on that end. Some of the best fight we've seen from this team this year. I think it got off to a pretty good start, and IU was able to finish the first half up by 4. Unfortunately, IU came out a little flat in the second half, giving away their halftime lead, allowing IU to go up to as much as 7 at one point. But then an IU 12-0 run in the middle of that second half would put IU back up. And from there, it was a battle. It was a battle of tough turnovers and decisions and good made plays by Purdue that would have us going kind of back and forth, but holding the lead for the most part. And then a final 8-0 run by Purdue would kind of make it even as close as it was, with obviously that questionable ending on it that we all saw. Very sad. Lots of split conversations about that, and we'll get into that and a little bit more in this edition of Hoosier Morning After. Thank you for being here with us. I'm your host, Chad Schwartzkopf. Martha is on the road. Again, you know how weekends are at this time of the year for youth sports and youth basketball, and Martha's very involved in that as well. On the road to Indy to play some youth basketball, coach some youth basketball. Martha might be hopping in at some point. So if you hear some rough audio and stuff like that as Martha slides in, that is why Martha's on the road for this one. Really, obviously, the biggest heated conversation and thing to speak on in this game. And it's one of those debates that you're not right or wrong on both sides. There's arguments both ways. Is that last play, the end play of the game? I'm in the camp of IU should have taken a timeout. I don't know, comment below if you're watching in the YouTube TV or whatever, or if you're watching right now, what would you have done? Would you have taken the timeout? Would you have let them play it out? If no timeout, obviously, if you're going to go into it and not call a timeout, let the guys play. The ball should not have been in Rice's hands. There should have been some talk in the huddle about get the ball when we're going, who's initiating things, who's getting things going, who's running something, look for someone. There should have been talk in the timeout in the huddle of what do we do when the ball goes down here? What do we do if they make that shot on the inbound? Where is it going? Where are we running out to? If we get a rebound, who gets it? Kind of thing like that. What are we initiating? And I think the proper, obviously, this is playing armchair coach here and Captain Hindsight, of course, but with how Galloway was playing in that second half and how well he was executing the pick and roll, you wanted something drawn up of that case. You wanted the ball to whoever rebounded it to get that ball to Trey Galloway and allow him to make that decision in those moments because he had that hot hand. It was not for Rice's. It should not have been for Rice's hands. He had been sitting out a lot of the game. He had been cold for a lot of the game. We'll get in a little bit deeper into a few of those guys that struggled in this. I've got some comments to that, but it should not have been to him. It should have been to Trey Galloway. I mean, even Painter saw that. Painter said in the post-game thing, and I quote, "We were just fortunate Trey Galloway didn't have the ball in his hands at the end there." I mean, let's just be frank about it. I mean, Hayner sees it. That's where it should have been. And I think it's equally magnifying and disappointing to have an end like this after the last game IU played was down to a last play as well. That Maryland game was a rough call and everything there. Obviously, that can you can have a discussion on, well, in the Maryland game, we called timeout and look how that did. So might as well have them go for it. And there's also talk, just because there's so much that went into that last play, where you could argue if he was fouled or not. But that brings along the old conversation that you always want to have in those things. You can't count on a call being made there. You can't count on the refs to blow a whistle in those situations. A lot of the times you see refs are a little more reluctant to blow their whistles. They're going to swallow their whistle, as it's said, at the end of those types of games. And as Gritty brings up in the chat, yeah, I saw that too. And Ballo was pissed. I mean, there's videos out there of, I think it was Josh Poss put up on Twitter of the full interaction, and Ballo had just fouled out. So I think that was frustration too. And he was ticked at him. And that is, you are right there. Gritty saying Ballo was ticked at Rice, loved the passion out of Ballo. And that's what's been great about Ballo in this kind of section of the season, is that he's had that passion and that aggression. And that's great to see. Obviously, would have loved this team to find this earlier, and more of the players to have that in other games, because it would have paid dividends, especially in Atlantis. But I like guys seeing heated and everything like that. The flip side to that is I hate to think what this can do to the psyche of Rice. I don't want this to affect him long term. I want him to be able to shrug this off and obviously move on from this. But I think overall, it was just kind of a game where you saw 5 guys for IU that really stepped up. And those guys played a lot of minutes with each other. And while I haven't seen anyone break down a lot of the lineups and the plus minuses with the different lineups and everything, I would love to see that. Maybe I'll dig deeper today. And if you find that, please, on Twitter, tag me and everything when you see that stuff, because I'd love to look at those numbers, because that lineup of Leal, Ballo, Galloway, Goody, and McKenzie was just fantastic in this game. That was IU's best lineup. And an equal argument to that is disappointing that the coaching staff didn't see that, and that we have a head coach that is too stubborn in his ways to make that adjustment going into half. Because I think if IU would have gone with that lineup to start the second half, things may have tipped a little bit differently. IU may have been able to not allow that run to start the second half out of Purdue. So a little critique there, coaching wise on that decision making. That was to me a very poor decision in the moment from the coaching staff. My player of the game is got to be Anthony Leal. I mean, he played with a real FU energy in this game. He was just that nagging little thing. It was really reminiscent of Sheehy, and just his energy. Sheehy's energy in Mackey was always that extra little turned up, just aggravation. And sure, he had those little tic-tacky fouls. He had the little hook thing that he got called on and all that different stuff. But I like that out of him. That's what you have to bring when you're playing in a rivalry game in an arena like Mackey. You have to come with that FU energy and not care about that student section and just face them, stare them down. And we've had great moments. We've had fantastic moments out of Leal throughout his career, but I would have to say this is probably his best complete game in an IU jersey. I can't think of another game where he was able to impact things and be in there for as many minutes as he was in this game. Let me see. I didn't even mark down his minutes. Finished with 35 minutes in this game, only second behind minutes wise behind Mackenzie Mbaku, who had 36 minutes in this game. So needed to be on the court. and great to see that they kept him out there on that. And I think did a great job on Smith, guarding him and being just a nagging force, making the right decisions on the different screens. Sure, Smith still got his 24, but I think Leal made them a tough 24 for him. It was just a lot harder for him to get things going. And I think because he was having to fight through those screens to just find his own basket, I think he knocked Smith off of his game as well on an assist side. I mean, he did finish, I guess, with 7 assists still, but it just felt like it was a good job by him to at least limit the impact that he could have had against us. And then equally so on the offensive side, we're used to seeing Leal not be as aggressive offensively and look for his own shot. He was at least looking at the basket a lot in this game. You've seen games where he's dribbled and gotten downhill to the basket and he's not looking to shoot it. He's always looking to kick it out or drop it off to Ballo. And he did that a couple times, but he also looked at the hoop a little bit more in this game and got his own, which was fantastic to see. And hopefully this built that little confidence to allow him to do that some more in this game. I mean, finished with just 6 points, 2 for 2 from the field, perfect from the field. So again, those moments that he decided to take shots were obviously good enough that he made both of them and then went to the line twice, 2 for 4. Obviously, talk about that when we get into numbers, because the line was a little bit, I think, of one of the spots that allowed Purdue to have this game. But just great there. 4 assists, 4 turnovers. So the turnovers were a little rough. A few passes weren't the greatest from him. But one of the few guys for Indiana that finished in the positive plus minus. So +4 for him, +4 for Luke Goody as well, and Hatton, believe it or not, with a +2, but that was only for 3 minutes. So shows how impactful he was and how much he needed all of those minutes. Same exactly for Luke Goody, and that when those two were out, the rest of the team was in the negative plus minus. Speaking of Goody, just he has to be back in the starting lineup. He has to. You have to put him in the starting lineup. I know. I know. IU's in a weird switch situation, and the coaching staff feels like they have to have Renew in there, but he just doesn't have it right now. And you got to have Goody in there. Goody's first half was so impactful that it was just criminal not to have him to be able to continue that into the second half. He had 13. He was 13 points in this game, 4 for 9 from the field, 3 for 6, from the 3-point line, and made his both free throws. Just couldn't find his offense in the second half as he got all of those 13 points in the first half. But I have to play Captain Hindsight and say, if he starts into the second half, maybe he's able to carry that over a little bit more. But also, I will say that's probably as well when you see a player like that has a good first half and then doesn't do well in the second half, you have to a degree, tip your hat to the opponent, because I'm sure Painter talked to his team and they looked to take Goody away in the second half. So I'm sure that's a good majority of what that discrepancy is between those two halves for him. But again, I'm going to die on that hill that he's got to be back in the starting lineup. And with what he was producing for IU and how impactful he was in the game, you need to go into your second half not defaulting to your starting lineup. I hate that coaching decision. Your start in the second half needs to go. Your starting lineup going into the second half needs to be with your best lineup from the first half. Needs to be with your best players that got you where you are. If the game is going your way, even if it isn't going your way, but you need to have an assistant or someone that's looking at those stats and numbers overall and saying, these guys have been the best for us in there, so we need to start with them. We need to keep that energy going. Now, there has been times where IU goes back to their starters in the second half, and they've been able to get little runs and good injections of energy this season. But I think that has been in cases where the starting lineup was the best in the first half. So I would love to see that adjustment. But unfortunately, I don't think that's an adjustment we're going to see out of this coaching staff. Another player that I've been harder on recently and everything, because he just hasn't looked out of sorts, it was Trey Galloway. I think he was great in this game, especially in the second half. Like I said, that pick and roll game that he was playing, where when Goody was falling off in his production in the second half, Galloway just picked off that slack, scoring 13 of his 15 in the second half, going 7 for 10 from the field, 1 for 2 from 3, 5 assists on the game, 6 turnovers. Again, a little messy with the turnovers overall for IU in 26 minutes of play for him. And I think it was really that second half, that 12-0 run that IU had to get back into this game, was thank you to Trey Galloway being the best ball handler and initiator for IU in this game, getting in those pick and roll situations. I mean, he obviously had a good enough game when the other team's coach is thankful that you didn't touch the ball in the last possession for your team in the game. So just great to see him get back to where he was. And again, it's probably not coincidence that the first 3 players that I'm talking about that had were probably towards the top of the best play in this game are Indiana kids that know the weight of this game, know the weight of the rivalry, know how to deal with it, know how to attack it. And I think they came with that physicality that comes with a rivalry game. And I hope to see it some more out of all 3 of them. And hope to see this Galloway going forward. And maybe it's the haircut. He doesn't have the broccoli hair to flop around and get in his way. Now he's more streamlined. So let's see how that continues for him, because I really think that that's something that IU needs out of him, especially when you have a fall off like Rice. I think another player as of recently who's finally woken up from hibernation, as I've said, and I think is one of the most aggressive games we've seen possibly this year out of him, was McKenzie. Just attacking the basket a lot more in offense, and then equally so on the defensive end. I didn't think I wasn't too aware of his deficiencies. I think he stayed with his man for the most part, locked down whoever he was on. He benefited, at least in this game defensively, that he wasn't up against Purdue's best players or a go-to person for Purdue on the defensive side. Purdue did game plan against him a little bit for that, obviously knowing the film. And there were some moments in the second half where they went to some screens, causing IU to have to switch him on to Smith. And especially in 2 incidences that come to mind to me, Smith was able to easily get past him and get points. So happy I didn't see them game plan and go for that more. I think IU did some things on defense to not cause those switches to happen. So I think that's why Purdue maybe went away from it. So that was a good catch for them. But a pretty good stat line for him. 25 points, 10 for 17 from the field, 3 for 8 from 3, and 2 for 2 on the line, hitting some big threes for IU down the stretch and everything. And I think a few more of those go in. You feel a lot better for IU in this game, but a good overall McKenzie, and a McKenzie that I hope to see moving forward and a lot more in these games. And hopefully he stays awake. Hopefully we don't see him go back into hibernation. Now the tough one to talk about, obviously, are 2 players that struggled the most in this game, Rice and Renew. Just 3 points in 28 minutes for the both of them. Don't know if the energy and the volume and the rivalry of this game got to Rice a little more, the physicality. This is probably, obviously, might be the biggest, not knowing much of his other season and how he played out there. But in general, the last team that he played with, they don't really sell out the arenas like this. They don't really go into this kind of energy and experience this. So that might have been one of the things that kind of really got to him in this game. Obviously, other guys stepped up, but you at least want a little bit more production out of him as your leading point guard. And like we said before, a little bit better decision making at the end of the game there. And at least to have the wherewithal to know that you haven't really had it in this game. I think there were moments when he went in towards the end of the game where earlier on he tried to force a shot and a bad shot. He didn't even look to pass it at any point, and he missed a long two. And then that might have been first. It might have been first half. It might have been second half. But anyways, a moment where you saw him trying to get himself going rather than just letting the game come to him and getting his teammates going. And I think that was indicative and kind of showed its hand to that last play. He was going to try to get downhill, and he's pretty good getting downhill. Again, he's great at that. And to a degree, I think I'm fine with him trying it, but he needs to have the wherewithal to see it wasn't there and back out, because you can't go in there thinking you can force a foul and get to the line. You've got to have the wherewithal to maybe try it, but pull it back and initiate, get something going, or call the timeout. Know the situation better. And like I said, obviously Ballo got on him in that, and I don't want this to pile on to Rice too much mentally and get in his head, and I don't want to see a funk out of him from this or caused because of this. So hopefully he can move on from this, but just not what you want to see from him. And I would also then lean to Renew. This is the old Renew we've seen before. He's still trying to find his offense, still trying to break off all the rust, shake off the rust from sitting out for, 4 or 5 games, so maybe even 6. And getting back to his fouling ways. I mean, just not having the right mental state to not just give away those stupid fouls. I mean, the moving screen that happens way before even the ball gets across the timeline. I mean, yeah, maybe it shouldn't have been called, but it's stupid for Renew to put himself in that situation. And then you had, I think that it was the last foul that he gave. It was on Lawyer that was driving to the hoop, and instead of staying vertical and going straight up, he brings his arms down and makes it easy for the refs to call that play. And it had been a physical game, and the refs were letting guys foul, letting that physicality happen. So you probably could have gotten away with that, just staying vertical and allowing your bodies to meet at the basket. But putting your arms down like that and then turning around and getting frustrated with the refs and everything after that just shows that he's unaware. He doesn't see it. I don't know if he's not paying attention at his tape, if he's just getting too caught up in the moment, because that can happen. But it's something he needs to fix. It's something he needs to get away from, because those are cobwebs in the closet that have been there that we thought had gotten cleaned up a little bit, but we've found some more cobwebs. They're still there. It's still going on. So a little frustrating, a little frustrating to get that from him. And but good to see, again, good to see overall the fight for IU in this game. I'm going to move on to stats. Looking at stats in this game. Again, overall, relative box score shooting and everything like that looked great for IU. You can just kind of point to a few things of where it fell apart for IU and where it was. And the biggest rearing its head, obviously, is the turnovers. 20 turnovers to 10 turnovers is not good. 26 points for Purdue off of turnovers. That's also not great. 13 steals for Purdue. So a lot of those turnovers came from steals, and I wouldn't say many of those steals were forced by Purdue. A lot of kind of bad passes or missed situations in there that Purdue was able to capitalize on, and those are things you don't want to do, especially in your rivalry game when you're at your rival's place, because those lead to 9 fast break points, and those are things that get your opponent's gym going. Those are things that gets energy, extra energy to your opponent. So allowing for those live ball turnovers, those runouts to happen, is kind of death in these types of rivalry games, and shouldn't happen. A positive, at least, to look at for IU. IU limited Purdue to 2 for 13 from the 3-point line, so that's great to see. Obviously, that's something that IU has struggled with this season. Struggled against a lot of guys. I think IU defended the 3-point line really well, especially I would say Fletcher Lawyer. He's kind of been a thorn in IU's side in the past, but IU was able to limit him in his attempts and his makes. He was just 1 for 3 from the 3-point line in this game for Purdue. So good job on that one. And then you go down their line and you see just a lot of donuts as far as 3-point makes for their team. I think IU kind of dared Heidi to try to make some, and I think he baited into those. IU was okay with Heidi trying to take some of those 3-pointers, and you're just kind of shutting down other things. IU was 40 to 36 in points in the paint. Again, shooting overall was pretty good at 57% for IU, and possessions overall for IU, again, great as well. When you're looking at 66 possessions and you're scoring at 1.152 points per possession, that's a great ratio between those two. However, it's those turnovers that throw that number off. And so it leads to just some great back and forth basketball and such a great rivalry game. And I think this is where you kind of look at a game like this for IU and you see it as, is this sustainable? Is this what this team can be? Is this the ceiling of this team currently right now? I know rivalry games can give you a little bit extra juice, a little bit extra energy, and a little bit extra aggravation and motivation, especially from those 3 Indiana boys that we saw in this game. But this is something that has to be repeatable for this team. This is something that a lineup that was found that IU needs to go with a little bit more in these games. An aggression and a fight that you'd love to see on both ends of the court, and something equally so that's equally as frustrating, because you have games like this, and while it does instill a little bit more hope and a little bit more confidence going into the rest of the season, that if we can just produce like this, things can get a little bit better. The tournament isn't out of the question for IU, especially if they can mimic this type of game moving forward. It's still there. IU's still in the last 4 out, and some people, obviously this is going to hurt a little bit, but it's a rivalry game loss on the road. Yes, if you pick it up, you move up quite a few spots in the net. So a missed opportunity in that. But overall, it was just a great rivalry game, and how great is it to be in this place talking about a game where we fought and we were in it until the end. We can't say this about this team overall, because going into it, I didn't have much hope going into this game of what type of team would have shown up. And I was just wishing for a little bit of fight, but I got so much more fight than I expected out of this team and out of these players in this game. So that hope meter for me is filled up just ever so slightly more. The only thing holding it back for any more is just the inconsistency and the reliability of this team to repeat things like this. Doesn't say they can't, but odds are not great in that department moving forward. But it could have been football switched. It could very well have been football switched. where IU was going to go in and just get spanked. Like in football, Purdue came in and we spanked them. So good fight, frustrating ending, tough closing things out down the stretch, and a way that things could have been better in the end for this. IU goes on the road next, and this is a really big one. This is a big answer situation. How are they going to answer? IU has Wisconsin on the 4th. That's Tuesday night. It's a late game. I think that's since Wisconsin's in Central. I've got my calendar saying that's a 9 p.m. game. So very late one to watch and then get up and talk about the next morning. But we'll be here to talk about that one, and we'll see what kind of team shows up, who's able to continue and show that fight. What kind of adjustments, if any, does the coaching staff do? Do we see Goody in for Renew in the starting lineup? Those are interesting things to look for. What kind of performance do we get out of Rice? How does he respond to the adversity and the mental side that obviously he's dealing with right now in this game? But again, like I said, my hope meter has filled up slightly more with this game, and I hope yours has too, because we still got a lot of games coming down the stretch, and at least we were able to say that in this rivalry game, wow, we did drop it, that IU fought and IU showed some things and possibly gained some confidence out of a few guys. Hopefully we see Leal finish off his senior season, as he has fought for IU so much on the court, continue to fight and possibly even find that next level for him and where he can contribute on the offensive side. I hope to see him stay aggressive on offense for IU moving forward in this one. But for this edition of Hoosier Morning After, that will do it for me. Thank you for being here on a quick turnaround. I know it's tough to get up and talk about your rivalry game or think about that and deal with the emotions that come with that. But hopefully your coffee feels at least a little bit better this morning than what it could have been going into this game. Follow me on Twitter at General Chadwick. There you can find out more information about the show, when we're going to go live. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit that thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. On Twitter, follow me. Share this podcast with your friends and family members. Greatly appreciated. We'll be back again the morning after the next game. Until then, go out there, have yourselves a wonderful day, and let's go Hoosiers.